This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Just wonderful. Yes. Well, we're going to have a moment of primordial sound with Mark, with didgeridoo. You just begin and... Thank you, Mark. Yeah, in the Vedic literature, it was said that when awareness became aware of itself, the first vibration or frequency was created. In the Bible, it was the word. I have a sense that it was the sound of the didgeridoo for me. Well, when I was preparing for this presentation, I asked myself why people are coming here. I wouldn't flatter myself and say, to look at me. So, yes, some are curious, others are interested in information, others inspiration. But I was very aware that that's not really why you're here. You're really here just to be love and to share love, to remember and reveal to yourself your own loving nature, your own inner awareness. And then there are some of you who will say, well, but it's not easy for me to recognize my own inner nature, who I really am. What is it that veils you, that veils us from our own essential nature? And that's what we're going to be exploring tonight. Not so much exploring the veils themselves, but ways of making them more transparent. Maybe even dissolving them. These veils. What are these veils? And I think you're all aware of them. Judgments of others, of self, beliefs, identification with the mind-made self as our thoughts, our feelings, our sense perceptions, treasured wounds, blockages, interpretations. These are all veils that obscure our own inner nature. So tonight, after we explore the impact of love, we'll be doing a very powerful forgiveness and unconditional love process after the break. So that means that those of you who are thinking of leaving before the break will miss it. And you may never know what you're missing. But that's what we'll be doing after the break. So we have a large group here, and I'm sure for most of you it's been a busy day. So let's take a moment to be fully present and arrive. And if you would, just gently close your eyes for a moment. Just put your things down if you have something on your lap. And allow yourself just to begin to relax. Just allow yourself to begin to relax. And as many of you know, one of the best ways to relax is simply to become aware of your breathing. Just become aware that when you're breathing in, you're breathing in. And when you're breathing out, you're breathing out. And if other thoughts or feelings or sensations come to mind, just gently but firmly bring your awareness back to your breath. And as you're breathing in and out, just sense or imagine now that you're breathing in and out as if through the center of your chest, as if through the center of your chest, as if through your heart space. And as you're continuing to breathe in and out through your heart space, allow yourself to recall a wonderful heart-opening experience that you've had. Something that opened your heart fully. Perhaps it was a loving experience, a caring experience, one of grace, gratitude, perhaps an experience of deep inner peace or flow in the moment, a sense of oneness or harmony, or just fun, just a really good time when you lost your sense of time and space. Perhaps it was in solitude or with another or others, perhaps in nature or with a pet. As you continue to breathe in and out through your heart space, just allow yourself as best you can, to feel these feelings, these heartfelt feelings. And now become aware of a gift that's gracing your life in this moment. It could be someone or something you love or care about. It could be just being here now, alive and aware, hearing these words. It could be the gift of life itself. A gift that you didn't learn, you didn't earn. A gift of grace itself. Could be a love of the divine, of that which is beyond understanding. Just allow yourself to become aware of such a gift as you continue to breathe in and out through your heart space. And now take in a deep breath through your heart space, and as you release your breath, feel this loving energy expanding, radiating throughout your entire body, down to the tips of your toes, to the top of your head, the tips of your fingers. Just feel the aliveness now. Feel the aliveness. Feel your inner energy body vibrantly alive. As loving awareness flows through the lens of the heart, it shifts the frequency. It shifts the frequency of the inner energy body into resonance with our essential nature, with the truth of who we are. And with the truth of what is. And with the truth of what is. So it's love that links our inner energy body with our essential nature, and our inner energy body with our physical body. And as we'll be seeing shortly, it literally coheres the physical body and the energy body. It's love that links form with essence. It's love that links form with essence. The entire electromagnetic physiology of the body is shifted into a coherent state where the frequencies of the body begin to group together and come into phase with one another. And we'll see what the applications of this are shortly. So when you're ready, just gently opening your eyes. Just wanted to mention that after the forgiveness process, we'll be taking questions. So unless there's something that's really unclear and important, we'll hold questions till then. Some people ask me how it happened that I came to be involved in something that sounds as new agey as healing with love, given a background in traditional and academic medicine. So I thought I'd take a moment just to share that process with you, because it's so interesting, since we're all interconnected, how one part of us shifts. And for me, it started at a retreat in the mid-70s, and I was I was in a deep meditation. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was alone in this dark room, and suddenly it felt like someone had turned on the lights. So I opened my eyes, and the room was still dark. And I closed my eyes again, and again this inner illumination occurred. And then I felt a presence, and then I heard a voice, of course, inside my head. And this voice, I say it's a voice, but it's indescribable. It said, "Your work is to heal with love." And the hair stood up on the back of my head. Tears started to roll down my cheeks. I knew that it was true, but I didn't know what it meant. So I was in a busy practice in San Francisco, and at the university. I didn't know what that meant. And then I said, "Oh, so I'm worthy." And the voice said, "You are no more or less worthy than anyone else. Your work is to heal with love." See, when that aspect of the self, this little self, says, "Oh, am I really good enough, for that?" This egoic sense of self. This presence would have nothing to do with that. Your work is to heal with love. So I couldn't speak about this for a number of years because it was so profound. It was so ineffable. And then, a few years later, I was at a retreat, and I had as a roommate a young man who was in his early 30s, and he was a composer of children's songs. And as it turned out, he had metastatic cancer. He had 10 baseball-sized lesions in one lung, and 7 in another. One of his kidneys was completely obstructed with cancer. The other one was 50% functional. In the middle of the first night, I woke up, he was in pain. He was having trouble breathing. So I got up and I went over to his bed and I said, "Can I help?" And he said, anything, mate." He was from Australia. And so, of course, I didn't have any medication. And I just spontaneously sat down on his bed and I visualized above my head a radiant sphere of light like the sun, and a beam of light descending through the top of my head to the center of my chest, and then the energy just flowed from my heart up my shoulders, down my arms, and I held my hands on both sides of his chest, and I recreated this radiant sun between my hands and just held it there without any particular thought or intention. This all occurred spontaneously. After a few moments, he started to breathe more easily. He said, "Thanks, Doc. The pain is gone. The pain is gone." And he slept that night. And the next morning when he woke up, he said, "Hey, Doc, you know, you're really a healer." And I thought, healing with love. What happened that night? I didn't know. I couldn't understand it. But what was undeniable was that something very profound had happened. Well, if I go to the textbook of medicine, Harrison's textbook of medicine, and look up love, you know, it's not there. It's interesting. The oldest and probably the most powerful force for healing that humanity has ever known has not been acknowledged or explored by the medical profession. So that's part of what prompted me to start to explore healing and love. And I should say, the next few days he was fine. He slept well those nights, and then we hugged and we said goodbye. He was going back to Peter Brent Brigham Hospital at Harvard to receive chemotherapy, and that was the last that I thought I would see of him. 10 years later, I was at a conference. There was a man singing children's songs, and he started to tell his story. I said, could it be? And yes, it was. I went up to him. I said, "Do you remember me?" And he said, "Doc, you pulled me through when I was going under." And we hugged. There were tears. It was just amazing, amazing story. And of course, I personally didn't have anything to do with this because I literally didn't do anything. I was just a conduit for whatever portion of this gift of grace I was to be part of. Amazing. But what that did was it started the process for me. Then I went back to my practice, and I started looking for opportunities. And a woman came in who had a pelvic mass. It was actually an old pelvic inflammatory disease process. She had had an infection in her fallopian tube. It had been filled with pus, but it had been treated with antibiotics, so it was no longer active. But she had just gotten married, and intercourse was painful. It was affecting her relationship. And when I examined her, I felt this mass, which was a good 6 centimeters in diameter. There was a tenderness there, and there was some adhesions to the pelvic side wall. And she said, "What can we do?" And I offered her surgery with those dimensions and those symptoms. That was an appropriate thing. She said, "Is there anything else?" And I said, "Well, we could do energy work." And she said, "What's that?" And of course, I didn't know. So I said, "Well, let's just do it." And she said, "Okay." And of course I did the same thing that I did before. I figured if it worked before, the radiant sun, the sun between my hands, held it there like that. And for about 3 or 4 minutes, it felt like there was completion. And I said, well, we're done. And she said, is that it? I said, yeah, that's it. Why don't you come back in a week? And a week went by and she didn't come. And I said, uh-oh, I think I'm in trouble. The board of medical examiners come knocking at the door. Dr. Laskow, how did you treat this person who had pelvic inflammatory disease, that was not active at this time? Anyway, I said, I can't do this, so I stopped thinking about it. But 9 months later, I saw her name, and it's interesting that it was 9 months later because I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. 9 months, she came in and said, I asked her how things were. She said, oh, everything's fine. I said, well, good. And I examined her. There was no mass, no induration, no tenderness. I said, what happened? And she said, well, after you treated me, I had no more problems, so I figured, why come back? I said, oh, thank you. Okay. So now I said, okay, this is working. And I started to select work with other people and quite a few other things, rheumatoid arthritis and quite a few gynecologic issues and problems and infertility. And I was saying, well, I don't really understand the real nature of this, but it's important to explore it. How much of this was due to a placebo effect? And you all know a placebo. You give somebody a sugar pill, tell them that it's a medication, and 30% will respond as if it were the medication. People even grow hair when they're told that this medication grows hair. That's the power of belief. So I said, well, I had a sense that there was something much more than the power of belief associated with this. So I decided that I wanted to explore this. And as I started to look at the situation, I realized that there are too many variables for me to explore working with a person. What about the nature of this consciousness interacting with that other, seemingly other consciousness? What about the nature of that interaction? I decided to work with single-celled organisms, bacteria first, and then cancer cells grown in tissue culture. And I had a friend who was a biophysicist, microbiologist at one of the major universities in the Bay Area. And we worked at night from 12 midnight till 5 in the morning. And we found that by focusing on the bacteria in a specific way, we could reduce their growth rate by 50% relative to controls. And but there was a secret to this that we discovered. And the secret was that in order to make this most effective, not just using intention, we had to add another ingredient, and you already know what that ingredient was. That ingredient was love. Now, this is a little strange. How do you love Salmonella typhimurium, which causes dysentery in humans? Well, what I discovered was that as I looked at the Salmonella under the microscope in a petri dish, suddenly there was a realization, oh, the same creator that created me created you. You have as much right to exist as I do. I may think, from my point of view, from my perspective, that you're in the wrong place. But from the perspective of the Creator, and somehow I shifted into that perspective. We're both here now, totally in existence. And when I lovingly accepted the existence of the Salmonella typhimurium, my awareness began to vibrate at the same frequency as it. In effect, energetically, the two became one. There was an entrainment process. And then, when I introduced the intention to decrease its growth, not to kill it, because it had the same right to exist, but to decrease its growth rate, that, in fact, is what happened. And you can say, well, wait a minute. If you unconditionally accepted it, how come you wanted to change it? What I unconditionally accepted was its essence. What I wanted to change was its behavior. If you think for a moment of your child, say, if you unconditionally love your child, and your child keeps running across the street at risk for getting hit by a car, could you, while unconditionally loving it, want to change its behavior? Yes, of course you can. And when you unconditionally are accepted for exactly who you are, what is it that you feel? When you are unconditionally accepted, just as you are, what do you really, really feel? Love. So anything that we unconditionally accept, we come into loving resonance with. That's the basis for a lot of healing. In fact, what we just did, this process which I call a conscious heart focus, is a foundational process for healing with love. We breathe in and out through our heart center. We either recall or feel in the moment genuine, deep appreciation and love. And then we focus this loving energy with intention on whatever the object of our love is. Because the nature of love is to come into unity with whatever the object of its attention is. What love does is it unifies. It helps, it merges with whatever the object of love is. You can love a hot dog. You become one with it. You love your lover. You want to become one with it. You love the divine. You become one with it. So it's the awareness on one level, one dimension of interconnectedness, and at another dimension, it's the emergence into oneness. And then, as one, even love disappears. Even love disappears. When there's only one, there's only one. But as soon as one becomes aware of itself and wants to return to itself, that's love. So it's that fundamental and it's that primordial. So I did other research working with cancer cells, and again using loving intention, and found, and I won't go into details here, I have some papers and also this material is recorded in the back of my book. I found that if we focus with intention in the form of thoughts, we could reduce the growth rate of cancer cells by 20%. If we focused with just an image of what we intended as an outcome, we reduced the growth of these cancer cells by 20%. If we combined thought intention, and image intention, we got a 40% reduction in growth rate. This was the first time that I was aware of that there was a distinction made between thought and image and the impact on the growth rate of cancer cells. We could also stimulate the growth rate of cancer cells if that was our intention. And we also found out that if instead of focusing on the cancer cells, we focused the same information on water that we used as a medium to grow the cancer cells, we got similar results. Isn't that interesting? That the water, and we did this quite a while before Emoto was doing his work, that the water contains information. And our bodies are at least 2/3 water. So that starts to have implications for healing. So I did this research, and then I went back to my practice and I started applying it, developed a variety of techniques and tools. And what we started to do after when we were working with the cancer cells, we were using the uptake of radioactive thymidine in the DNA of these growing cancer cells and running them through a scintillation counter. And we were doing this again at night till 5 in the morning because this was not approved research at the universities that we were doing this at. So after a while, we were unable to continue to do that work, and we started looking for another endpoint to determine the impact of intentionality and love on living and non-living systems, because the water is a non-living system, the cells are a living system. So we came to look at DNA, and I'll show you about some of the research, and then we'll move on from here. One of the things that I mentioned to you was that when we flow loving awareness through the heart, there's a shift in the electromagnetic energy of the body. So let's look at this information for a moment here. So this is an electrocardiographic lead. It's not important, but just to show you that every cell in our body responds to the electrical impulse of the heart. You can pick up the electrical impulse of the heart from your left or right earlobe, from your big toe. The electrical output of the heart is 2.4 watts. It's much stronger than the electrical output from the brain. In fact, when you do an electroencephalographic reading, you have to filter out the electromagnetics of the heart in order to see it. So when I started working with DNA, I found that we could unwind and rewind the double helix of DNA. An organization heard about our research, the Institute of Heartmath, and invited us to come there and work with them. And while I was there focusing on the DNA and entering into these expanded states of consciousness that I described before, they attached an electrocardiogram lead, an electroencephalographic lead to the brain, and an electromyelographic lead 2 finger breadths below the navel to the dantian or hara in some systems of energy anatomy, basically measuring the energy from the musculature of the body. And these 3 leads were fed into a computer which processed them to analyze what happens to the wave fronts, these energies from the body at the time that we're in these altered states. When we're in these altered states, and by the way, part of what's interesting about this is that many of you were in this altered state a little while ago when you were doing the conscious heart focus. something very interesting happens in this state here. Now this is the electroencephalographic lead. This is the one from the heart, and this is the one from the electromyogram over here. What we've got, what's important here is that there's a certain symmetry that you see. This is what we call 10 cycles per second, or 10 hertz over here. And although you can't see it in the back, if you come up here, you'll see that there's a grouping of frequencies that come together at 10 cycles per second. And all of these are groupings of frequencies that then come together. And this is known as coherence. Coherence is really a balance between the two parts of our nervous system, the automatic or so-called autonomic nervous system. It's not important, but the entire body comes into a state of coherence when the heart comes into balance. And the heart is brought into balance through loving feelings, through unconditioned loving acceptance. The heart is brought into balance through unconditioned loving acceptance, and the entire body responds to that loving acceptance. Do what? Can you move the picture up? Don't think so. At that, because then yeah. Now, here was someone who we brought in, and we asked this person just to try to love, And this is just in contrast, so you'll see the difference, the incoherence. This is just if you just look at this, see this is from the brain waves. They're not in coherence. They're not coherent. And this is the electromyographic lead. This is a resistance lead, and this is the heart lead. And you can see that it's, if you compare it to the to this lead, which is the one. This is my electrocardiographic heart rate variability, power spectrum, state of coherence. So here is someone who started to feel appreciation, love. This is in blue, for a period of about 5 minutes, and then was asked to shift and recall something that was frustrating to him. And look what happened in red to the balance in the autonomic nervous system. When something comes into coherence energetically, this laser that I'm using is a coherent light. The light from here is scattered incandescent light. When you cohere the light, when you bring it into a grouped phased frequency, it squares the energy. So when you come into loving coherence by flowing your energy through the heart, your entire body becomes like a human laser. And when you introduce an intention in the presence of genuine love or unconditioned acceptance, that is the most powerful force that you can mobilize to impact your inner energy body and your physical body. And that's what I was able to demonstrate to myself, because the purpose of all this research for me was really to explore for myself, before I decided to leave my practice, to find out if this was real. You know, if this was real, I was demonstrating this to myself. So what happens? 5 minutes of anger. What's the impact of that on the immune system? Over here. Here we studied salivary immunoglobulin concentrations. This is the starting value. 5 minutes of anger. Now here's something interesting. After 5 minutes of anger, the salivary immunoglobulin level, which the immunoglobulins deal with invasive bacteria, viruses, and such. After 5 minutes, initially there's an increase in the immunoglobulin level, as if the body in fight and flight is preparing for some kind of activity, and it's getting ready for it. And then, and this is an hour after, and then an hour after that, this is a 6-hour study, an hour after that, it's down to, half of the starting value. And then it continues to remain down. At the end of 6 hours, it's still only 3/4 of the starting value. That's 5 minutes of anger. 5 minutes of anger impacting your immune system. And here's what 5 minutes of care, which is what you did just a little while ago with the conscious heart focus. This is 5 minutes of love, essentially. We use the word care here. Some people have difficulty with the word love because there's been so much abuse in the name of love. And it's just as also true with the word God. There's been so much abuse with the word God. So there are frequencies of love. One is care, another is gratitude, another is forgiveness, as we'll see here. So 5 minutes of caring, and look what happens to the immunoglobulin level. It's off the chart, essentially. And then, interestingly enough, the second hour, it drops back down to the starting value, and then gradually goes up so that after 6 hours, it's actually about 25% higher than it was when we started. So this says here, our immune system is only as strong as the dose of self-love, self-acceptance, and self-care that we administer to ourselves daily. And here, disease is the soul screaming through the body, attempting to get the truth out once and for all. Remember, what we were saying is that when you flow loving awareness through the heart, it shifts the frequency of your inner energy body so that it comes into resonance with the truth of who you are and the truth of what is. In other words, when you totally accept what's so, the truth of what is, that's what the soul is calling for. That's what the soul, your soul, is wanting to express. The soul that is the interface between form and essence, wants the truth to be expressed. Now here's an interesting bit of research that was done. An extremely low frequency coil was placed around a tree that was 200 feet away from the person who was entering into a state of cardiac coherence, a state of loving, unconditioned loving acceptance over here. What happens is, interestingly enough, the tree starts to respond to the coherence of the human heart. So when you're out in nature and you're walking and you're feeling loving, then the birds are singing for you and the bells are ringing, like that wonderful song, "To a Wedding We're Going." The birds are singing, the bells are ringing for me and my gal. And that's what's really happening. There is only one. And when I started doing this work and I started doing the healing work, I came to realize since we're all interconnected at the highest levels of our being, it must take an enormous amount of energy to maintain the illusion of separation. Separation, I mean, separation of one part of ourselves from another that's too painful to hold in consciousness, those wounds that we were talking about before, separation of ourselves from another. See, we may be different, but we're not separate. And that's okay. We're unique and we're unified simultaneously. Simultaneous awareness. Just like the wave is the water simultaneously. And it's a wave. And it has a unique form. And it's water. And so that's true for all of us. And separation from our environment, but most importantly, separation from our own inner essence, from the truth of who we are. That's the separation that we truly want to heal. That's the real healing. Healing into oneness through love. That's the real healing that we're working toward here. I got a message that we're just about done here, so I won't be showing you some of the DNA research that I did, other than to say that I wanted to demonstrate that in addition to my unconditioned acceptance and love and my intentionality, if instead I asked for source, for the divine to manifest itself on the physical plane so that I would know it was there. And I did this. I'll show you just briefly what this research is. I did this in a number of ways, but we'll only go into this one. This was a magnetometer, a shielded magnetometer, which monitors magnetic energy, usually, and it's shielded, so there's not an electrical component that comes in, and it can pick up earthquakes before they begin, and so on. And the top line here is the straight line that was occurring until I asked for the presence of the divine, for source, for grace to come through and manifest its presence here in the shielded magnetometer. And that's what happened. And my colleague who was doing this, a research scientist, suddenly he saw it on the oscilloscope. He said, "What's happened? What did you do?" Because this is a very dramatic spike, and this is actually, it becomes negative. The magnetic field is actually totally neutralized here. This is another one with DNA, and again, this is not a great slide, but the important thing about it was that I was able to this is a control. This is what I did. I was able to unwind, and this is rewind the DNA. But here's what the presence of source was doing. Much higher, much more substantial. So just to summarize that, then, when we do call upon grace and the divine, it's here. I mean, for some of you, this is no surprise, and yet, to satisfy the left brain so you can surrender and totally open your heart. And that's what I hope that you'll do. We'll be taking a break now, and we'll be doing a very profound forgiveness and unconditional love process, which will take about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions. And again, the purpose of this process, and I'll be, of course, introducing what I mean by forgiveness before we begin that, but the purpose of this process is to make at least transparent some of these veils, the veils of judgment of others, the need to punish and blame another for what they did or didn't do. But most importantly, to make the veil that separates you from your own true nature more transparent, perhaps even dissolve it today. So we'll have a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 10 minutes after. I'll sound a bell. So forgiveness. Like love, it's a word that can mean many different things. So I just wanted to share with you the way I'll be using the word and what I mean by forgiveness. Commonly, we think about forgiveness with regard to other people, but when I use the word forgiveness, it doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It has to do with you. So forgiving is forgiving yourself love, forgiving yourself freedom. Yeah. Yeah. It's not about forgetting. You can still remember, but not have the charge on it. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it was so easy to just let go? Let go of attachments to resentment, to blame, to wanting to see that person pay a price, to hold them accountable. It's not for you anymore to hold another person accountable for what they did or what they didn't do. Leave that up to divine law, criminal law, civil law. Let it go. Let it go. Let go of the need to control through holding on to your story about the situation. Let go of your attachments to the story. Let go of using it as an excuse to avoid growing, evolving into the fullness of who you really are. The man who shot the Pope is still in jail. The Pope went to the jail and forgave the man. The Pope, former Pope, is free. He's free in many ways, but he was free as soon as he forgave that person. He did it fully and genuinely and from the heart. So shortly we'll be doing the forgiveness process. And of course, as we mentioned, the most important person to forgive is yourself, and that's an inherent part of the process. But I will ask you to choose one person today to forgive. And I know that there are some of you who said, I have done so much forgiveness. And I've done this so many times that I really don't need to do this. And I honor that. But I would suggest then that those of you who feel that way, as long as it's not a cop-out, can choose to forgive the collective human consciousness for the impact on the environment. There are many things to do. The important thing is to engage actively in the process rather than to avoid it. So in a moment, we'll be entering the process. In the beginning of the process, I will be asking you to bring to mind the person that you're choosing to forgive. This is other than yourself. That's later. And enclose this person in an oval cameo of violet light as best you can. As you know, there are different modalities, sensory modalities. Some folks are very good at visualizing, others are more kinesthetic and they sense or feel, and some can hear auditorily. So do the best you can, any combination of those, but just imagine in whatever way you can in your mind, this person contained, their energy is then contained in this circle, this oval, this cameo of violet light. Now this process is a very powerful process on many levels. I remember doing this. I did a demonstration with at a seminar with a woman who, and by the way, of course, this process is done as an inner dialogue, so there's no need to reveal anything about yourself, so you feel totally free to fully express yourself. She did the process. We broke for lunch. As it turned out, she did the process with an ex-boyfriend. And over lunch, she received a phone call. She hadn't spoken to him in a year and a half. And he called. And he said, you know, I feel it's time to bury the hatchet. It's time to just connect and let you know that even though there was bitterness, I really love you. You know. And she came back and reported that. Another woman who did a process in the audience just like this was a physician. She hadn't spoken to her father for 10 years. 2 weeks after the process, and it was her father that she forgave. 2 weeks after that, she received a letter from her father for the first time in 10 years. Said, let's talk, let's get together. These are just a few of many, many examples of the impact of this process. And of course, what do you think the impact is when you forgive, truly forgive yourself? Truly forgive yourself. Truly embrace yourself. That's where the real deep healing comes. That's when the veils start to dissolve. So, if you would just gently close your eyes. Choose one person, just one person today that you're wanting to forgive. And now just allow yourself to begin to relax once again. Just to begin to relax once again. And become aware of your breathing. Just become aware that when you're breathing in, you're breathing in. And when you're breathing out, you're breathing out. And as you're relaxing, I'm going to ask you a question. Just take your time in answering it, but answer it as honestly as you can. Answer it as honestly as you can. Are you really, really willing to forgive this person, to let them go their own way into the light? To let them go their own way into the light, so that you are free. Are you really willing to let them go? Good. Continuing to be aware of your breath. Now just sense or imagine that you're breathing in and out as if through your solar plexus area in your upper abdomen. Just sense or imagine your breath coming in and leaving as if through the solar plexus area in your upper abdomen. And now bring to mind about a foot in front of your solar plexus area, enclosed in an oval frame a violet light, the image of this person that you're choosing to forgive today. And silently communicate now to this person what it is that they did or didn't do that you're choosing to forgive them for. Let them know especially how what they did or didn't do impacted you, what your feelings are. The more that you can mobilize your feelings and express them, the more complete the release. Let them know now with the specific incident or incidents. You'll have about 3 minutes. I'll let you know after a minute, next minute, and then I'll sound the bell. Let them know how you feel about what happened or what didn't happen. If there was pain, if there was abandonment, if there was sadness, anger, if there was love. Whatever it is, let them know. Don't hold anything back now. Don't hold anything back. Anything. Say things that you've never even said or admitted to yourself. It's time now. Just allow yourself to go deeper. Just go deeper now. Just go deeper now. You have a minute left. Keep breathing through your solar plexus area. Begin to finish up. You have 30 seconds. Good. Now, in a sense, by blaming and wanting to punish this person for what they did or didn't do, you've kept them in jail inside of you, with you as their jailer, standing just outside the jail door to make sure that they didn't escape. In effect, being in jail with them. So in a moment, In a moment, you're choosing to introduce the key of forgiveness into the jail door, to swing it wide open, and to release them into the light to go their own way. Freeing up all this energy that you've bound up with the story, with the blame, with the punishment. Freeing up your own energy for your own growth, evolution, and healing. Releasing the illusion of separation. So once again, look at your willingness to completely and totally release this person to go their own way. And when you're ready, with your next breath, deep breath in through your solar plexus area, hold it for a moment. When you release your breath, release it like a mini tornado, totally and completely dissipating the image before you now. 2 more times. Deep breath. And let them go. And once again, let them go. Good. Just swirl the energy around the room and up into the light now. Just imagine swirling the energy around the room and up into the light. Good, and it's done. And now just shift your attention to your heart space. Breathing in and out through your heart space. Breathing in and out through your heart space. And in the future, when you communicate with this person, be they living or dead, be it verbal or nonverbal, just stop for a moment before the communication. Breathe in and out through your heart space. And then speak your truth from your heart. From now on, speak your truth. Be it verbal or nonverbal, speak your truth from your heart space. And now, bring to mind, not enclosed in a violet frame, off to your left, the image of yourself as a little one, as a child. And in the center, yourself as an adolescent, and off to your right, yourself as an adult. And starting with your child, communicate to your child what it is that you're choosing to forgive them for. For the regrets that they may have for things that they did or didn't do, for any shame, for any guilt, but especially for the things that they did to themselves or others that were not loving. For the things that they did to themselves and others that were not loving. Starting with your little one now. Just tell them what it is. With a specific incident, tell them what it is that you're now choosing to forgive them for. Then move on to the adolescent and move on to the adult. We'll have about a minute for each, maybe a little longer. I'll let you know when a minute is up. If you're still involved, stay with it. Okay, 1 minute. And 2 minutes. Begin finishing up. Good. And now just let your little one, your adolescent and your adult know that what's done is done. And now it's over. And just physically pick your arms up and embrace the images of yourself. Just physically pick your arms up and embrace the images of yourselves. Let them know that all is forgiven. Bring them into your heart. Bring them into your heart space. All is forgiven. Welcome home again. Welcome home again. And when you're ready, but not before, just let your arms fall back down into your lap. And now for a moment, become your own best friend. Become your own best friend and take yourself to the most blissful, peaceful place or space that you know of. The most blissful peaceful place or space that you know of. And allow yourself to begin to feel in the center of your chest, in your heart space, a sense of complete and total, boundless, infinite love that you have for yourselves, that you have for your little one, that you have for your adolescent, that you have for your adult. Just pure, total, boundless, infinite love. This is a love with no judgments, no comparisons. A love without condition or qualification. Beyond time and space. A love even beyond understanding. Just pure, total, boundless, infinite love. And with your next breath, just allow it to expand to fill your entire chest cavity full of loving light. Full of loving light. Allowing it to move up into your shoulders, down your arms, right down to your fingertips. Allowing it to move up into your neck and into your head. Just filling your entire head with loving light. Just filling your entire head with loving light. Just filling your entire head so much so that it begins to flow out the top of your head like a fountain of loving light. A fountain of loving light cascading down around and through your body. It's flowing through your body and out through the bottoms of your feet into the earth below. Just a fountain of loving light flowing, clearing, dissolving, releasing the illusory sense of separation. All that is false. Just a fountain of loving light flowing through your body. And now just allow yourself to feel the exquisite love of your essential nature. This is a love that, like the sun, is ever present. Like the sun that's sometimes obscured by clouds. This exquisite love is sometimes obscured by those veils. But like the sun that patiently waits for the clouds to part, like the sun that patiently waits for the earth to rotate out of darkness into its light again. This exquisite love patiently waits for you, patiently waits for you to ask, to open, to receive its love. And so, a love beyond learning, beyond earning, a love ever present, ever present, ever present. Just allow yourself to feel this exquisite love suffusing your entire body from the top of your head to the tips of your toes until your body glows with this exquisite love. And now silently ask this exquisite love to forgive what needs to be forgiven, to heal what needs to be healed, to do what needs to be done, to bring us, little one, adolescent, and adult, into wholeness so that we are one. Forgive what needs to be forgiven. Heal what needs to be healed. Do what needs to be done. Bring me into wholeness so that we, form and essence, are one again. Just ask, just ask, just ask. And then allow it to be done. Allow it. Allow it to be done. And it is done. Always, eternally, infinitely one. And now, once again, bringing your awareness to your heart space. Taking a deep breath in through your heart space, hold it for a moment. And when you release your breath, release it as a burst of light. Activating every cell, every atom in your body so they sparkle like stars on a brilliant night. Again. Scintillating stars. The heavens are within you. And you are one. And you are one. Good. So now, if there are questions, we have 10 minutes.
Okay, is that good? I have a question based on what happened to me when I landed in the airport, and I had like about 10 minutes or 15 minutes of being really furious and angry, and I was angry when I got in the taxi service guy's taxi. And I took it out on him. I was really terrible. And then I suddenly kind of popped out of my head. And I forgave myself for being a really evil bitch. And forgave him for being grouchy and mean back. And I suddenly felt all this love and forgiveness for both of us, and felt all this great appreciation for him, and apologized to him, and felt like totally joyful and better. And I wanted to ask you about that 5-minute rule, because what happened was, I'm sure that in the 5 minutes or more that I was in one state, definitely it wasn't healthy. But then when you flip states, which can happen sometimes if you step out of yourself and you suddenly see the whole thing from another reality, and love comes in and really comes, I just felt all this love and appreciation. And which,
well, it sounds to me like you've answered your own question.
So then does the whole, all of the negative thing just reverse within your own body as well in that moment?
Sometimes, depends on how deep the process was for you. It can be that simple, and sometimes it isn't.
Because, I felt like it.
The important thing is that you now have an experiential tool to use whenever that situation arises. So that's wonderful.
Oh, yeah, well.
Thank you.
Yes, you made mention of unwinding DNA and winding it back up, and I didn't know what you meant by that.
Well, in the chromosome, you've got strands of DNA, which are the genetic material, and they're intertwined. And what we were able to do when we started doing research was to, through intentionality in a unconditionally loving field, unwind the double helix of DNA. When DNA replicates, it unwinds. So this obviously has significant implications for the physical body. So we were able to unwind the DNA. Then we were, with another intention, able to wind DNA that had been heated, and it's a protein base, so it's that's called denaturing. So it was denatured, it was separated, and we were able to rewind the DNA. Now, what's interesting about this is that at the Institute of Heartmath, where I was on the scientific advisory board, we took a group of 10 people and taught them some of the methodology of what I call the conscious heart focus and what they call freeze frame, something else. And when they learned this process, what they were able to do was to unwind the DNA as well. See, what's important here, and that's what thrilled me, and actually it prompted me to leave my practice, when I discovered that it wasn't only me that could do this, but that we could teach everyone to do this. This is our birthright. because loving awareness is our essence. And when we use this loving awareness in a specific way, this is what we can accomplish. So people were able, who were trained in this method, were able to unwind the DNA. When we took another group of 10 people, and we didn't put them through the heart focus, but we just asked them to hold the intention, they were not able to unwind the DNA.
I guess I just didn't understand what the healing advantage is of unwinding the DNA.
Well, in order for cells to reproduce, they have to unwind. So when we worked with the cancer cells, we could reduce their growth rate by 50% relative to controls. And that was profound. And the way that we found out that we were able to do it was preventing or rewinding the DNA, preventing them from reproducing. So if you can rewind the DNA or inhibit the unwinding of it, you're inhibiting the growth rate. And we were able to measure that with a reduced uptake of radioactive thymidine. So that's what we were able to do, and we were able to demonstrate that. And I'm sorry that I don't have the time to show you the transparencies of all of this. Yes, and then we'll come to you.
So first of all, thank you for showing me what I'm doing. I never understood. On a more mental way, what happened when you love people just unconditionally. My question is, when we give healing, basically what happens, the body or the emotional...
Could you hold the microphone a little closer?
The emotional mental body is vibrating on a higher level, means healing, transformation can happen. And for me always is a question how to keep this high vibration for myself and how to teach people to stay in this high vibration, because as soon as they leave a treatment, the vibration lowers down, and then they need to come again, or, the sickness comes up again.
Well, I think that one of the processes that we did here is the forgiveness, unconditional love process. That shifts people's vibrations, sometimes permanently. Now, what I found is important is that when you work with someone, you enter into the highest vibration that you're capable of, that unconditionally loving state. You're not attached to the outcome, because that reduces your vibrational state. You're not attached to the outcome. You're in this state, and you turn it over to grace. And when you do that, the highest vibrations possible come in. And that's been my experience, and that's what I was able to demonstrate. So that's how I work. Yeah. And then people will, through induction, start to shift, because the higher frequencies mean that they carry higher energy. So the higher energy always impacts the lower frequency, lower energy, and brings it up. So you basically induct people into their own loving essence, because that is their nature. That's all you have to. It's like two tuning forks. If you have an A tuning fork here and a C tuning fork here, and you sound the A tuning fork, it won't affect the C tuning fork. But if you have an A tuning fork and an A tuning fork, and you sound the A tuning fork, it will start the other A tuning fork vibrating, and then they'll start to entrain one another, and then there'll be an amplification. In other words, the two become one energetically. That's called resonance. And so if you have as your A tuning fork your truly unconditional love present, your own, if you're not, it's not veiled from you. And the other person, even though they have veils, you penetrate the veils with that unconditioned love, and it opens. And they start to resonate in unison. And then their inner light starts to shine through. And they may cover it up again, and you work with them. And depending on what the divine order is and their soul's agenda, things will unfold as they should. Excuse me.
Howdy. I was wondering how this would, the replicating and unwinding the DNA to heal, would that work for Alzheimer's? Would it work for stuff in the abdomen? How would that, does it work across, it works across the body just with intent only? Have you done tests otherwise, further tests on this?
No, I haven't. I haven't done more. Well, I did more research than I've obviously shared with you tonight. But we're looking at the mechanisms now of disease. And the mechanisms of disease are not necessarily the sources of disease. And I've found over the years that ultimately it's best to work with the source of disease. And for that, we have to invoke the presence of that person's soul. What is it that the soul wants, when we work together? Here is a form that's temporary. And here we have essence that's beyond birth, pre-birth, beyond death. So what is the relationship between the form and the essence? What's really wanted here? And so that's how we have to look at this. That's why I call the work that I do healing into oneness now. Because to me, that's the ultimate medicine. So yes, we work with the body, and whatever will happen, will happen. We do the best that we can with the body. But ultimately, it's aligning with source and allowing what happens to happen. Mm-hmm. People who have Alzheimer's are conscious at a deeper level. And sometimes they come out of that state of Alzheimer's. I remember talking to Elmer Green. His wife had Alzheimer's. He had to take care of her, roll her over every 3 hours, 24 hours a day. He took care of her for 2 years, and he would read to her continually during this time. And then once, she just sat up and she repeated a number of things that he had read to her a year before, just perfectly. It was all there. So we think, oh, they're not connected, they're not here. And that was a great lesson for him. But he knew it already. That's why he was reading to her. Yeah, because our consciousness is present regardless of what's happening to the mechanisms of the body. Yeah. Any other questions? We're just a little bit, this is the last question. Yeah.
You may have already answered this, but what were you thinking of when you personally you were manifesting these higher states of unconditional love? What were you thinking?
Well, I wasn't thinking. That was important. That was very important. No, that's the thing. One of the things that we do in the seminar is we learn to shift from the head to the heart. That's a very important process. I call it the head-heart shift. There, and that's what we've been doing here. We've been shifting from the head or the solar plexus, as it were tonight, where a lot of this energy associated with anger, as was pointed out, resentment, abides. So we were shifting. After we released the energy here, we shifted to the heart, which then integrated it and resolved it. So the important thing is just to shift into the heart. And if you can be in a mindless state, you use the mind to get here, but then once you're here, you let go of the mind.
So you said you were visualizing, though. Is that the same as thinking?
Yeah. When once you're in the heart, once you're in this unconditioned state, then you introduce an intention which has a thought to it, an image to it. In other words, what makes it so powerful is when you lovingly, unconditionally connect with whatever it is you're focusing on. Then you introduce the intention. If you introduce the intention and you're not connected, because you see, love connects. Love is the link. If you're not loving something and then you're just thinking it, what is the chance that you'll really impact it? I mean, there are many ways to change something. I was a surgeon. I operated on many people, and I used a scalpel. Somebody can hit something with a hammer. There are ways of changing it. But if you at the subtle energy level, the most powerful way to change anything is by unconditionally connecting with it, unconditionally accepting the truth of what it is. Then you introduce the intentionality to change. So I think it's a very good question. Thank you. Well, I think we're done for the evening. Thank you very much.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.